Hello, welcome to the episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Tuesday, August 29th. Hope everybody's having a good day so far and a good rest of their day yesterday. It is, in fact, Tuesday, August 29th here today. Hope everybody is doing well. We've got a lot to get into here on a Tuesday program. We are less than getting close to 1 week away from the start of the NFL season. A week from this Thursday, I should say, is the start of the 2023 NFL regular season. We are now less than 2 weeks away from Jets-Bills on Monday night. You got Hard Knocks tonight. One Jets drive last night was awesome. If you're a New York Jets fan that watched, if you haven't watched it, definitely go check it out. It was an awesome episode last night. And we get ready for episode 4 of Hard Knocks tonight, so looking forward to that. One more episode after tonight of Hard Knocks, and that's when you know the season is coming around the corner because Hard Knocks just training camp. Once Hard Knocks finishes up, it's game week against the Buffalo Bills next week. So we got a lot to get into today. Just off the top here, Mets took a 4-3 loss last night at home against the Texas Rangers. The Max Scherzer tribute video caught a lot of criticism for the Mets. I don't know why they made a tribute video. A lot of these teams do that. They were booing them when they showed them on the big board after the tribute video. So an interesting gesture there by the Mets. A lot of criticism, and rightfully so. A guy that didn't do a whole lot for your franchise, a guy that blew up in big moments, was a part of one of the most disappointing teams in baseball this year. So you understand the Mets fans' frustration, and then on top of that, they lose. The Yankees do pick up a win last night, so maybe they set themselves up to win a series. It's the Tigers. They're not any good. I don't care how bad the Yankees are playing. You got to find a way to beat the Tigers. So a nice win last night for the Yankees. They pick up their 63rd win of the season, and we'll see what they can do tonight. Back-to-back good starts for Sevy, so maybe that's a sign of something. I still don't think he's going to get re-signed in the offseason. He's a free agent. I still think he'll probably get picked up somewhere for the minimum. But it's a good start for Sevy. It's a positive. You hope he continue to play well, and who knows what his future holds. I don't think it's with the Yankees, but he's pitching better, and hopefully that stays. So we'll get to more of the Yankees and Mets later on. We'll start off today's show with my NFC East standings prediction. So yesterday, I did the AFC East. Today, I'm doing the NFC East. You know the drill, as I mentioned yesterday. Every other day, we're bouncing back and forth from AFC to NFC. So yesterday was AFC East. Today's NFC East. Tomorrow, we'll jump back to the AFC and go to the AFC North. Thursday, we'll go to the NFC North. Friday, we'll go to the AFC South. Monday, we'll go to the NFC South. Tuesday of next week, we'll go to the AFC West, and we'll wrap things up on Wednesday, a day before Chiefs-Lions with the NFC West. So every other day, bouncing back between the AFC and the NFC, so we'll get into that today. I also want to get into roster cuts are today at 4 Eastern, and one of the big topics around the Jets right now, or one of the topics around the Jets, is backup quarterback. Do the Jets need another backup quarterback, or do you trust Zach Wilson to be the guy, or do you go out and potentially add a guy like Colt McCoy who is available? I'll give you my opinion on that as roster cuts continue to take place here. Jets have about a good chunk of more moves to come. They're out there practicing right now. Saleh just spoke to the media, so we'll get more announcements by later on because 4 Eastern, 3 hours from now, is the Tuesday cut down deadline for each team to get down to 53-man roster. So we'll get to the Jets a little bit later on. We'll get to the quarterback situation. We'll also get to some other potential pieces as where the Jets could utilize depth at different spots with where this roster currently stands less than 2 weeks out from the start of the regular season against the Bills on Monday night. So we'll get to that later on. So it's a football show today. As I mentioned, a lot of football content coming your way from now really all throughout the season. And hopefully it's a successful season for the Jets and obviously for the Giants as well, as New York needs it because if you're a New York football fan, you need the success because most likely that means you're a New York baseball fan, and the New York baseball has been atrocious this season, so the New York football certainly needs to deliver. So yesterday, we took a look at one half of the New York football. That was the New York Jets in the AFC East standings, which I had the Jets winning the division. If you haven't checked that episode out, definitely go check it out. I appreciate all the support. So today, we're going to take a look at the NFC East, my predictions. So just off the bat here, we'll take a look at last year. So the Eagles won the division last year with a 14-3 record. The Dallas Cowboys came in second at 12-5. The Giants came in third at 9-7-1. And the Washington Commanders came in the fourth, last place at 8-1. That one tie coming at MetLife Stadium against the Giants last season. So the NFC East really, from what was one of the worst divisions in football over the past couple seasons, specifically last year, has turned into one of the best divisions in football, getting nicknames like the NFC Beast, as last year produced 3 playoff teams. And in what is a very, very weak NFC conference, the NFC East is one of the biggest strengths of the conference, one of the biggest is the best division in the conference and one of the best divisions in football, because when you looked at it last year, we all thought the AFC West was the best division in football, but you now look at that division and you say to yourself, well, you don't love the Raiders, you don't love the Broncos. This division, however, there are 3 teams that have really good chances, have realistic shots in making the playoffs, and in a couple years, potentially, the Commanders could be on their way to putting up some successful seasons in the future. So this division right now is really good, and they're really good in the future. And anytime you have a division that has the Super Bowl, anytime you have a division where a team was in the Super Bowl last year from that division, it's usually a good division. It's usually a pretty competitive division, and that's where we'll start. The 14-3 Philadelphia Eagles come into this year fresh off of their Super Bowl loss with Super Bowl aspirations again, going into year number 2 of this extremely talented roster, the second year after coming off, obviously the year coming off of a Super Bowl loss to the Kansas City Chiefs, but they were knocking on the door. They're right there. They're coming off a 14-3 campaign. They're coming off of a first place finish rather, and you expect them to have another big year. So we'll start here from the top and go down. First place, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. I think this is pretty obvious. As much as the Giants have improved, as much as you still have to look out for the Dallas Cowboys, which we'll get to those 2 teams here in a second, the Eagles are still the best team in the division. They're still the most talented team up and down the roster, despite losing Miles Sanders in the offseason. They added DeAndre Swift. You still like their running game. You love the quarterback. You've still got Dallas Goedert. You love the weapons. They have one of the best offensive lines in all football, headlined by Jason Kelce. Obviously, Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, all those guys that have done really big things for them. Kelce obviously leading the way at the center spot, being one of the best offensive linemen in all of football, and has had a big time career in Philly. But up and down this roster, this team's dominant. From offense to defense, this was a 14-win team a year ago, and they're the most talented again in the division. You feel that this team, despite losing Miles Sanders, it's a very similar roster that they're rolling out there last year. And you know how I feel. I'm a very big believer in Jalen Hurts. I know a lot of people out there believe that last year was just a big season for him, and he's not going to come out this season and play the way he did last year. A lot of people feel that was kind of just a one-hit wonder of a year, but I've always been a big Jalen Hurts believer from his days in Oklahoma, coming into the NFL, kind of being underrated, coming out of college. Early parts of his career didn't do a whole lot, showed some positives, and then last year he really took a big step forward. And you expect him to continue to make plays. You expect him to continue to go out there because he's got all the weapons around him. He's got A.J. Brown. He's got Devontae Smith. He's got Dallas Goedert. You like DeAndre Swift at a backfield, a guy that is a good pass catcher as a running back. Got a nice little burst to him as well. They are a very stacked defensive team with pieces like Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, James Bradbury, Darius Slay, which is one of the better 1-2 punches at corner in the NFL. We talk about Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed yesterday, which I do believe is the best. But James Bradbury and Darius Slay, Bradbury being a former Giant, has already played within the division, and Darius Slay, who's put together a very successful NFL career, are 2 of some of the better corners in football. They have a very good corner room. You like where they're at linebacker-wise. You like where they're at defensive line-wise. You like where they're offensively. They're well coached. I know Nick Sirianni's a little weird, but he's a good coach. He gets the job done. The way he does things is weird. I didn't believe in him at first, but he's done his job, and he gets the job done. And that's the most important part. So this Eagles team is going to be right in the heart of it again. They're probably, in my opinion, I think they'll probably be right up there in the number 1 seed in the NFC. They're going to be right in the conversation to get to another Super Bowl. As long as Jalen Hurts is healthy, out there doing what he's capable of doing, utilizing his legs, getting the ball out to different receivers, utilizing his weapons to the best of his ability, this team's going to be in the conversation to win a Super Bowl every year as long as Jalen Hurts and the talent around him is playing at this level. So expect the Eagles this year to come back and do the same thing. I know some people are, and this happens every year. We hear this with the Chiefs too. Oh, is this a down year? People always try to make up stories, make up headlines to try and bring down a team. Look, I don't really like the Eagles. I'm not a big Eagles fan. I was rooting against them last year in a Super Bowl, but I'm going to give you my honest take on the show. They are one of the best teams in football. So Eagles finishing in first. I think their floor is 9-8. It easily could be 10-7. I mean, I don't really think this team's going to be well over a 10-win team. Their ceiling's 14-3 where I had them at last year. I don't know if they'll get to 14-3 again. My prediction's 13-4. I still think they win the division pretty convincingly, despite, the two teams behind them potentially making a run for it with the Giants improving. I still think they're going to win this division convincingly. I don't think the talent on any of these three other rosters are anywhere close to where Philly is. Certainly, maybe the Giants have closed the gap, but I still like Philly to win this division by a good margin at a 13-4 record finishing in first. And in my opinion, I think they'll be the 1 seed in the NFC. All right, so now we go to the second place team. So the Giants, after a third place finish last year, a surprising year under Brian Daboll, enter this season as an interesting team to watch because you don't really know if last year was just a kind of a one-hit wonder, as I mentioned earlier, with like a Jalen Hurts. Again, Jalen Hurts, some people thinking that Jalen Hurts is going to have a down year for some reason, which I just don't foresee that happening. But the Giants had an interesting year last year because you went into that year, they were a rebuilding team, new head coach. You didn't know about Daniel Jones. You didn't love the weapons around him. There was a lot of young pieces, rookie on defense in Kayvon Thibodeau. You just didn't really know what to expect from the New York Giants. You didn't really, Saquon Barkley coming off of a couple major knee injuries. Like, how would he bounce back? How would he respond? First year under the Brian Daboll system for Daniel Jones in such a big year for him. We even heard at the beginning of training camp last year where the New York Giants had Daniel Jones was struggling a lot. And turns out it was because Daboll wanted to test his toughness and test his ability to fight through struggles because he was actually giving the defense the plays that they were actually running. And you were just last year was just a weird year for the Giants. You didn't expect them to do a whole lot. And they went out there, they won 9 games. They won a round in the postseason. They obviously lost in the divisional round to the Eagles, but they won a wild card round. Daniel Jones earned himself a big 4-year extension. They added more talent in the offseason. And now you look at them, and I truly think this is the second best team in the division. I think the Giants are going to put together a better season than the Dallas Cowboys. Last year, I think you could tell clearly where the Giants needed to close the gap when it came to closing the gap on Dallas and came to closing the gap on Philly. I don't think the Giants have closed the gap on Philly. I still think this Giants team is, a year away from legitimately competing for a Super Bowl. I think they'll be back in the postseason. I think they'll certainly be in the conversation to maybe win another playoff round. I just don't think they're going to be back in the Super Bowl or be in the Super Bowl, but I certainly think they'll be in the conversation to be right back in a playoff race and potentially win another playoff round, maybe 2. Maybe they knock on the door and lose to an Eagles team in a shootout or something. I'm not going to sit here and predict the playoffs, but I still think they're a 1 year away from legitimately competing and being one of the best teams in the NFC. But I like where this Giants team's at. You like the defense. Azeez Ojulari. They obviously added Okereke in the offseason from Indianapolis. Linebacker was one of their biggest needs. They added him back. You like where they're at with Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, who they gave the big extension to in the offseason. The defense is solid. Wink Martindale is going to throw you a bunch of exotic blitzes. They're going to confuse a lot of teams. You saw that success last year. The Giants didn't have a ton of talent on defense last year at times. They still got DeLeonard Williams, and that's a big contract and stuff. But, they might not have the biggest names on defense, but the way they play in the Wink Martindale system with the exotic blitzes, the way he does things, the way he just throws pressure all over the field. Even in the preseason games, watching on Saturday night with the Jets and the Giants, it's crazy to see the blitzes he was running even in the preseason. So he's been a great find for the Giants at the defensive coordinator spot. And then on offense, I know there's a lot of depth questions on this team. They're not as deep as some of these other teams, and that's potentially why I think they're still a year back, because good Super Bowl teams are deep. I don't think the Giants are quite there yet. They still have a lot of young pieces. They still got a lot of pieces that are developed, which is why I still think they're a year or two away. But you got Daniel Jones. He made a big step last year, or a huge step forward. You expect him to continue to get better. We don't really know what the future is of Saquon Barkley, but you still like, I mean, he's going to play this year, and that's all you can focus on is this year only. What Saquon Barkley's future is with the Giants, that's still up for grabs. That's still up for debate. He might not be a Giant next year, he might, but all you can focus on is the 17 games ahead of you, and you're going to have Saquon Barkley as long as he's healthy. My one thing with this Giant team, like the quarterback, like the running back, love the tight end acquisition of Darren Waller. I like where they're heading with Jalen Hyatt. I think he's got a lot of upside when it comes to the receiver. I still think this team currently is lacking that legitimate number one receiver. And I understand they have it in Darren Waller. There are some injury concerns there, but if Darren Waller's healthy, he can be one of the best tight ends in the NFL. We saw that 2 years ago before the injury concerns started to kick in over each of the past 2 seasons. You have Darren Waller, I understand that. And you're going to run a lot of 12 personnel. They're going to put Darren Waller in the best situation where teams aren't all focused on Darren Waller, where you can take some of the attention off of him. You trust Dable, you trust the Giants to go out there and be able to do that. But I still believe in a division that is loaded with receiver talent, I still believe the Giants are missing that true number one receiver. Potentially it could be Jalen Hyatt. Maybe it is. I don't know if Jalen Hyatt will ever be that. I think he's more of a number 2 option speed type guy, but he's still got to develop. Even if he is that number 1 receiver, he's still got to develop. That, to me, is why I still think the Giants are a little bit behind. They still lack that legitimate number 1 game-breaking talent at receiver. I love the tight end, but when you look at the rest of this division, every team in this division's got a legitimate number 1 receiver. The New York Giants do that. That is still my concern. Paris Campbell's a nice acquisition. You got Isaiah Hodgins. They're deep at receiver with a lot of good talent, but they're still lacking that one great receiver. And that's why I think when you look at them in terms of like Philly and stuff, they're also off at I think Philly's got the better quarterback. I think Philly's got the better receivers. They've got the better defense. Philly's got a lot of it better. The Giants can eventually close the gap. They're getting there. They shortened it a little bit, but there's still a gap. And I think the gap specifically at receiver. And I think that's where they lack in this division. And that's why I think separates them from legitimately maybe being a 11-12 win team to where I have them as a 10-win team. So the Giants, I have their floor at 7-10. Look, they're still in a good division. I don't think they're going to be 7-10 team, but there is that potential of they're still young, they're still growing pains, there's still going to be some guys that are going to have up and down years. It's potential that you completely outplayed. They outplayed your expectations last year. I don't think they'll be 7-10, but I do think their floor is 7-10. That's worst case scenario. I don't foresee this season. I know some people out there think this season's going to complete disaster. I just don't see that. They're well coached. They're a good team. I don't think yet last year was a one-year wonder. I think this is the start of a long, sustained run of success for the Giants. So their ceiling I have at 12-5. Look, if maybe a receiver emerges like an Isaiah Hodgins, if he legitimately emerges as this big-time guy, or Paris Campbell, really, or they just utilize the receivers the right way, Barkley puts together a big season, I could see them being an 11-12 win team. I could. Because you like where they're at defensively. Their secondary, maybe the depth is a little bit of a concern. Maybe the offensive line's a little bit of a concern depth-wise. But if Daniel Jones takes another big step forward and can be a 25, 30 touchdown guy this year, you could see them being an 11-12 win team. Ultimately, I think they'll be 10-7. That's one win approved from last year. I think they'll be back in the playoffs, and I think they'll finish second in this division behind the Eagles at 13-4. So now we move on to third place. And that's the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not high on the Dallas Cowboys this year. I'm not. For a while now, I've been high on the Dallas Cowboys every season. Last year, my optimism or my confidence level in the Cowboys dropped a little bit, and this year it's really dropping. I don't think the Cowboys are actually going to make the playoffs this year. I really don't. I know when you look at the AFC, you're probably thinking to yourself, who in the world are you going to have making the rest of the who in the world do you have making the playoffs, or outside of the Cowboys, who else do you have making the playoffs? I don't think Dallas is going to make the playoffs this year. Again, you know how I am. I like Dak Prescott a lot. Tony Pollard's got a lot of upside. I love CeeDee Lamb, but outside of that, there's questions on this roster. There's questions when it comes to the coach. when it comes to Dallas, Jerry Jones, all this control, they haven't won a championship in forever. They're getting worse. They got rid of Kellen Moore in the offseason as the offensive coordinator, which I think is maybe one of the biggest losses on this team. When you look at the offense, I know obviously maybe weapon-wise you look at it and say it's not great, but one of the biggest losses is Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator. Again, my biggest thing with Dak Prescott is the turnovers. The guy had 15 interceptions last year. That's my biggest concern. Again, I like CeeDee Lamb a lot. I think he's one of the better receivers he's a top 10, top 12 receiver in football. But outside of him, do you really trust Michael Gallup? Do you trust Brandon Cooks? Outside of those two guys, what about the depth? There's concerns there at the depth when it comes to the Cowboys receivers. And I think you kind of saw that last year, and that resulted in potentially some of Dak Prescott's interceptions, is not having a ton of trust, not having a ton of chemistry with those guys. We've heard a lot of negative things out of that team in camp. I know Zach Martin's back in that locker room. He is a leader. You like Trayvon Diggs. You like Lane Vander Esch, DeMarcus Lawrence. There's some pieces on that team that I certainly think are guys that are going to make plays, and they've made plays. But my biggest thing is I think you just look at this roster, and they've gotten progressively worse. And I understand they were a 12-win team last year, but I just don't love where they're at right now. I don't. I think Dak Prescott's turnovers are I think they're a problem. And he doesn't have much more talent around him. So I feel like, if anything, those turnovers could potentially get worse. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, I don't think you fully love the receiving room. I know you got Brandon Cooks, Michael Gallup, which aren't bad, but are those really guys that are going to be able to get you over the top? Maybe they will in the NFC because the NFC is weak. The defense is better, much better than it used to be. I don't know. I feel like there's something missing with this Cowboys team, and you've seen it during camp. McCarthy enters the season on the hot seat. It seems like there's drama with the whole Trey Lance situation. There's just something a tick off in Dallas. It's not so much on the field, it's more off the field. I don't like the Cowboys this year at all. I don't love them. I don't. I really don't. And I have nothing against the Cowboys. Like I've liked Dak Prescott a lot. I still do. I like CeeDee Lamb a lot. I think he's a very good receiver. I think he's actually underrated at times. I have nothing against the Cowboys, but I just think they seem to be on this downward trajectory where Dak's turning the ball over a lot. Don't love their receiving core. Tight end's a question mark. The offensive line, if they could stay healthy, is the strength of their team. It's been the strength of their team for a very long time, especially with Zach Martin getting the contract situation figured out. And if Tyron Smith can stay out there, their offensive line's fine. The defense is solid. I'm just not in love with the off-the-field stuff, the Trey Lance situation, the coaching hot seat. There just seems to be some internal drama. I think it'll be a rough year for the Cowboys. I still think they'll finish over 500. I think they'll go 9-8. In my opinion, I think they'll go 9-8. They're going to finish in third. I don't think they make the postseason. I'm going to say the Cowboys. Their floor is 7-10. Their ceiling's 12-5. Look, they were a 12-5 team last year. They were a 12-5 team. That's with Dak and all those turnovers. They've got a very similar defense. The offense without Kellen Moore, that's certainly a concern. But if Dak can go out there and limit the turnovers, they can easily be. Look, they were a 12-win team. They've still got talent. So I still think there is that potential that can get up to that 12-win mark, but I don't think much more than that. My prediction, 9-8. I think they missed the postseason. I'm going with them 9-8, finishing in third. Fourth place, I have the Washington Commanders. I think this is pretty obvious. Look, I will tell you this, and I mentioned this to start the show. This division could get potentially a lot better in a couple years. I think the Commanders, their future is bright when it comes to the ownership. Their owner is invested. He's 20 times better than Dan Snyder. That was a complete disaster. We've known that for a while. It was just a matter of time until he sold the team and somebody else bought it. The fan base is rallied around the owner. I think the team's rallied around the owner. You'll probably get a coaching change at the end of this year. Ron Rivera's on the hot seat. They'll probably blow it up at the end of this year in terms of front office. But this team does have talent. I'll start with the defense when it comes to this Commanders team. I'll start with the good and the bad. I love where this defense is at when it comes to the Commanders. They've got one of the best defensive lines in football. They've got Chase Young, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, and Daron Payne was an 11.5 sack guy last year. He had 11.5 sacks. They've got one of the best defensive lines in football. Chase Young, I think, he's dealt with some injuries. He's been on and off the field. I still think we haven't seen his full potential yet. Potentially this year could be that year. when you look at their secondary, it's a little bit of a mix of some veteran. There's also some young talent. There's going to be some growing pains there. I don't love their secondary. I like their defensive line a lot. And I think their defensive line's got a very bright future with guys like Dayron Payne, guys like Sweat, guys like Chase Young, who are all really entering their prime of their career. Jonathan Allen's definitely more of a veteran. But I love their defensive line. It's one of the best in football. Some other parts of the defense, again, the secondary, the linebacker solid. Secondary specifically, there's some young guys there. There are also some veterans like a Kendall Fuller. There's going to be some growing pains. They've got high upside. The ceiling is high. You don't really know how low the floor is. That could be potentially a little bit of a concern. I'm not in love with their secondary, but again, I do think it's something that progressively could get better over the years. Get it next year into this season into next year. My biggest concern with this Commanders team is I think they've got talent. Like their receiving core is good. They've got Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Jahan Dotson. Like they've got 3 good receivers. Solid receivers for a team that is rebuilding. And that's my thought process. Like I know when you say to yourself, oh, you just said that the Cowboys receiving core isn't great. Well, for the Cowboys' perspective, when they're trying to contend for a playoff spot, I don't know if you would love that receiving core for a playoff contending team. But for a rebuilding team like the Commanders, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, 3 guys. McLaurin's a very good receiver. He's already proven in this league. He's a legitimate number 1. Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel. Curtis Samuel's obviously been around, played with Carolina, now in Washington, showing you some positive. Jahan Dotson's got some upside. I think you still want to see more consistency, but not a bad third option. You like the receiving core. You like the running back room. Young, good. Brian Robinson Jr. is obviously the headline of that group at 700-plus yards last year, and missed some games. You expect he could potentially be an over 1,000-yard rusher. They've got talent. They've got some young pieces. The biggest issue is quarterback. It's going to be Sam Howell, Jacoby Brissett, the backup. That's the issue. You don't love the quarterback. And that's why I think it falls apart. If you put an average quarterback on this Commanders team, they could easily be a playoff contending team, especially in the NFC. I mean, let me just take another quarterback in his division. You put Daniel Jones on the Commanders, they're a playoff team. You put Dak Prescott on the Commanders, they're a playoff team. You put Jalen Hurts on the Commanders, they're a playoff team. Definitely. You put any of these, the Commanders are in a similar spot where are similar to the Jets last year. Not quite, because the Jets didn't have all the ownership stuff. They didn't have a coach on the hot seat. It's a different situation. They also had a year 2 quarterback. Sam Howell is really, again, Sam Howell's it's a little bit of a different situation when it comes to the quarterback spot. But when it comes to, it's different, but it's the same. Like if you put an average quarterback on the Jets last year, they were a playoff team. I look at this Commanders team. I like their roster. I think there's a lot of young pieces, especially the defensive line. I love the defensive line. But I don't love the quarterback. Question, is Sam Howell even the guy? If he's not, you can't trust Jacoby Brissett to come in and win you many games. And that's why I don't think the Commanders are going to win a lot of games this year. I just don't, because I don't love the quarterback spot. Maybe Sam Howell's the guy. I just don't love it. Their floor, I think, is 4-13. That's the floor. That's 4-13. Sam Howell goes through growing pains. The quarterback situation's not good. Doesn't matter how much talent you got around him. If the quarterback's not good, that could be a problem. I think they're ceiling 7-10. I could potentially see them getting to 8-9. And I think overall they'll be 5-12. Potentially 6-11. Again, I like the roster. There's certainly some pieces to it that's got to be better. Again, maybe the secondary a little bit. The quarterback's a big issue. That's the problem. It's the quarterback. Like the receiving core, like the running back room. Love the defensive line. I think that's probably the biggest strength of their team. It's one of the best defensive lines in football. They've got a lot of positives, but the coach is probably out at the end of the year, and I really don't think you have the quarterback on the roster. And that's why they're a last place team. So I think they'll go 5-12 finishing last, because you don't have the quarterback and you probably don't have the coach. And that's a problem. So overall, Eagles finishing in first at 13-4, Giants second at 10-7, Cowboys third at 9-8, Commanders fourth at 5-12. And coming out of this division, I have the the Eagles and the Giants coming out of this division and making the postseason. So that's what I've got there. So NFC East predictions today. Eagles, Giants come out of it. They're in the playoffs. Cowboys, Commanders, I don't have making the postseason. And you might be thinking to yourself, okay, who in the world do you have coming out of the NFC? Well, stay tuned. We'll have North, South, West coming up over the next couple days, where I'll fill out my next 5 NFC playoff teams. So tomorrow we'll get to the AFC North. Steelers, Browns, Bengals, Ravens. Not the order. I just sent them in a random order, so no, I'm not. I don't have, spoiler, I don't have the Steelers winning the division, but I'll have those 4 teams tomorrow, the AFC North tomorrow. Again, Thursday will be the NFC North. Friday will be the AFC South. Next Monday will be the NFC South. Next Tuesday, AFC West. And we'll finish things up on Wednesday, day before Lions-Chiefs, with the NFC West to close things out. So, a lot more division predictions. Tomorrow we'll bounce back over to the AFC and begin the North for tomorrow and Thursday, with the AFC North tomorrow and the NFC North on Thursday. So stay tuned for that. So now I move into a little bit of Jets here. As the New York Jets and the rest of the NFL continue to cut down their rosters to 53. We heard Jerome Cap's been cut. Bam Knight's been cut. Tandil Smart still out there. We'll see how the Jets play all that. They placed Jimmy Moreland on the IR, cut Nick Vigil, cut Alex Erickson. So they've already made some moves. They've already made some cuts. No surprise cuts yet. I really don't think we'll see any surprise cuts from the Jets this year. If you want to call, I know some fans, and that's where we kind of transition to our topic for today. I know some fans consider Tim Boyle maybe a little bit of a surprising cut just because he's close with Rodgers, but I don't see that as much as a surprise because I think they're going to hold 2 quarterbacks on the roster, and in my opinion, Boyle's not going to get picked up anywhere. I think he'll stash him on the practice squad, and that leaves them potential to hold somebody else on the team rather than 3 quarterbacks. So maybe that's surprising cut again. I don't think a Solomon Thomas is going to get cut, or maybe one of these veterans is going to get cut. I think if anything, you're going to see a surprising guy make the team. Potentially that's at corner because Jimmy Moreland's on the IR. Eccles suspended week 1, and I don't think Bryce Hall has shown you anything this offseason or this summer. So easily Hall could get cut. Moreland's done for the year, and Eccles is out week 1. So if that happens, that's going to open up the door for some of these other really under-the-radar corners. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Maybe there's surprise at corner, if anything. But again, this is a fluid situation. After cut-down deadline today at 53-man roster, it doesn't mean that the rosters are completely set. Waiver claims period has to happen. There could still be trades. There could still be signings. There could still be a lot that takes place for the roster to finally be complete before week 1. So a lot's going to happen here over the next couple days. But one of the topics that has been in around Jetland for really a while now, but I figured now time to talk about it, and we've talked about it a little bit on the show already, is backup quarterback. And I know you might be thinking to yourself, why in the world are we talking about the backup quarterback when Aaron Rodgers, you're starting, you don't need to worry about the backup quarterback? Well, it's a good question. But backup quarterback, if something would to happen to Aaron Rodgers, where he would have to miss a game or 2, and that potentially could decide the division, would you trust Zach Wilson? And I would say the majority of the fan base right now doesn't. I would say the majority of the fan base right now would be on board of taking a backup. And I'm in the minority here. I don't really think, look, you want to go out and claim somebody, you want to go out and sign a Colt McCoy, fine, do it. But I think, I wouldn't be against it. I'm not saying I'd be upset if they sign a backup, but I don't think it's as much of a need as we need it to be. And I'll tell you, here's why. And maybe this is the negative way to look at it, but let's be honest here. If Aaron Rodgers would to go down for 2 games, whether you have Colt McCoy, Tim Boyle, Zach Wilson, or whoever, any of those guys, whether it would have been a Teddy Bridgewater, who obviously went to the Lions, so he's out of the equation, but a guy that many thought could potentially come on board during the offseason. You don't love your chances either way. Like going from Aaron Rodgers to any of these quarterbacks, in my opinion, you don't love your chances. Like if you had to rely, like let me ask you a question. And I understand, and I get the whole aspect of you got a road game in Buffalo, division on the line, Aaron Rodgers is down for that game. Let's say, hypothetically, he misses 2 games, and that game is against Buffalo. Do you trust Zach Wilson more or Teddy Bridgewater? Obviously, you probably trust Teddy Bridgewater more. But let's be honest here. Do you really trust Colt McCoy to lead the Jets into a road game in Buffalo or any of these road games that the Jets have this season or any of these tough matchups that they have? A road game in Miami, a road game in Buffalo. Do you really trust a Colt McCoy to go in there and win the game? Probably not. No, you might trust him a little bit more than Zach Wilson, but that's not saying a whole lot. Either way, in my eyes, the way I view this situation, you might be thinking to yourself, what the heck are you saying right now? The way I view this situation is, if Aaron Rodgers were to go down for a game or 2, depending on who you play up against, I don't care who the backup is, you're probably not winning that game. you're probably not going to Buffalo and winning with Teddy Bridgewater. You're not going to go into Buffalo and win with Colt McCoy. You're probably not going to go into Buffalo and win with Zach either. So in my eyes, it doesn't mean a lot. Like I think the backup quarterback situation at times is blown a little bit out of proportion by Jets fans. And I've actually been pleasantly surprised with Zach Wilson. I've been pleasantly surprised. I think if Zach Wilson were to go out there right now in a regular season game and play like he played in the preseason, he'd give you a chance to win. People forget Zach Wilson last year was playing like absolute garbage, and the Jets found a way to go 5-2 with him as a starter. They went 5-2 with him as a starter, and he was playing like garbage. He went on the road and beat Green Bay. Didn't play very well. They went on the road and beat Denver. Didn't play very well. And I understand you can look, oh, well, they went on the road and played New England, played like garbage. Yeah, that was the last straw, but they beat Miami with him being a game manager. They beat Buffalo with Zach Wilson being a game manager at best. This notion that, like, this, my point is Zach last year, and I'm not trying to defend Zach right now and say Zach's a great backup, but if Zach would to go out there and game manage for a game or two, which is what Colt McCoy or any of those other guys would do, you would potentially find a way to win. Like, if Zach Wilson go out there, complete 65% of his passes, throw a touchdown, maybe a pick, Jets defense gets the job done, and they squeak out a victory 20-17, like, I think you're probably going to get similar to the same production as Colt McCoy as you would with Zach. Now, you probably have a higher floor with a legitimate veteran backup because Zach's floor is low, and that low floor is he can go out there and have a 3-interception game. But Zach Wilson last year was playing like garbage, and the Jets were finding ways to win. He's improved a little bit. If he would have to go out there for one game this season against the Houston Texans, I mean, I wouldn't. If he can go out there and game manage for a game against the Houston Texans or the Atlanta Falcons, I think you probably get the job done. Like, I don't think there's that much of a difference between a Colt McCoy or a Zach Wilson, or Teddy Bridgewater was the best option. But my whole point here is, my whole viewpoint on this is, if Aaron Rodgers would to go down for 2 games, let's just say, and I hate talking about this because everybody's been healthy, and you knock on wood, this never happens. I hate talking about it because it's like a negative topic, and this is why I haven't really entertained it a lot this offseason, because a lot of people have been talking about backup quarterback. And to be honest with you, Aaron Rodgers, quarterback, I really don't care about the backup quarterback. I don't. And you maybe get that feeling from me right now. I'm not that concerned with backup. I truly believe that if Zach Wilson needs to go out there right now, and I'm not saying against Buffalo, he'd probably get destroyed, but if Zach Wilson would need to go out there right now and go up against, I don't know, the Texans, which we play late in the year, and he plays like this, like he was playing in the preseason, the Jets could probably come away with a victory. With that defense, they could come away. Again, Zach Wilson's more improved than he was last year. He's better than where he was last year. And the Jets were finding ways to win with him playing like garbage. He's better than that now. So they could, I think there's a better chance they actually win now with Zach than there was chances they were winning last year, and they were finding ways to win last year with Zach. You don't love Tim Boyle. Like, I would trust Zach right now over Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle's looked like garbage in the preseason. Again, I'm not against bringing a Colt McCoy, but I don't think the backup is as much of a need as I think. In my opinion, I don't think it's as much of a need. In my opinion, I don't. Because let's be honest here, this is another point too. If Aaron Rodgers would to miss a stretch of games, we're not talking 2 games. If he would to miss a stretch of 5 games, the season's over. The season's over. Colt McCoy is not going to replicate what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. Zach Wilson won't either. The season's over either way. No matter who your backup is. If Aaron Rodgers would to go down for 5 games this year, the season's done. I don't care who the backup is. The season's over. So that's my viewpoint on it is. If he would to go down, the season's done anyway. Like, it would be over anyway. Like the backup, Colt McCoy, if Rodgers would to go down for 4 games, Colt McCoy's, I don't think he's going to go out there and go 4-0. Neither would Dak probably. I mean, the season would probably be over anyway. Like, a backup quarterback is a backup quarterback. Most likely, Colt McCoy, if Aaron Rodgers would to go down, is probably not going to go out there and win you 3 out of those 4 games. He probably won't, especially if one's in Buffalo and the other one's up in Foxborough. So, I don't know. I'm not as concerned as the backup quarterback situation as many. I get the whole idea around it I get the whole concerns of, Rodgers is down for 2 games. That could be the division. Again, I'm not against bringing in a backup. I would be fine with it. But I don't necessarily think it means a ton I don't think it means a ton in my opinion. Because I don't think, in my opinion, you're going to get that much more production out of a Colt McCoy in a game on the road in a tough environment than you would out of Zach. Like, either way, Colt McCoy might play a little bit better, but is it really that much more than what Zach would probably provide? I mean, Colt McCoy is a backup quarterback at best in his NFL career. He's more proven than Zach, but he's just a backup in his NFL career. Like, Colt McCoy isn't this great guy, and I'm using Colt McCoy because he's available. He's out there, and it's been a name to look out for. But, look, Aaron Rodgers, our quarterback, if he would to go down, the season's done anyway. The season's done anyway. He needs to be your guy for 17 games. That's the bottom line. If he stays healthy, we'll be fine. We won't have to worry about this. So, that's my view on it. I know I was kind of all over the place there, but I want to quickly touch on that because it is a conversation. Again, not against it. I'd be okay with bringing in a backup. But I personally don't think it's that big of a need. Because Zach's been competent. If Zach can go out there and be competent for a game, be a game manager, the Jets can win. Again, they were winning last year with him playing like absolute garbage. If he can be competent for a game this year, they can go on and win that game. I mean, let's just be honest. Like that it's the truth. I mean, he wasn't playing good last year, and they were winning. He's in a better spot than where he was last year. So I think you got to look at that too. So, and again, I understand. It's only preseason, it's backups, but beggars can't be choosers. That's the only time he can play. You're not going to throw him out there in a regular season game and see if he can develop. The only time he's able to play is preseason. You got to take what you get in the preseason. So we'll see. Knock on wood, the best case scenario is Rodgers plays 17 games, has a great season, and we don't even have to talk about this at all this year. But it is certainly a conversation, especially as roster cuts happen and you make your decision on your final 53. And if Zach is the guy, if Zach's not the guy, if he's the backup, add a backup, Tim Boyle, who is it? We'll see. So, anyway, we move on here to the baseball for tonight, which has been brutal in New York. The Yankees did get the win last night. So, they'll play game 2 of the 4-game set tonight. It'll be Michael King versus Tariq Skubal. And as for the Mets, it'll be Andrew Heaney, Yankees legend, just joking, and Jose Quintana. So the Mets, game 2 of a 3-game set there. They'll look to even it up against the Texas Rangers. It is crazy. Like, you still find it just wild how baseball is so irrelevant right now in New York. Like, it's so irrelevant. And I know the Pete Alonso chatter has picked up some noise over the past couple days, which we'll get to here on the show. You know, as the season continues to roll on here, the Pete Alonso stuff. But I know that's picked up steam over the past couple days. But it's crazy on a nightly basis just how nobody cares about the New York baseball in New York. It's crazy to me. And it's just crazy because again, I'm a younger generation sports fan. So I don't fully remember. I don't remember the old, I know the Yankees weren't very good in the 80s and the Giants, obviously, were very good in the 90s. So were the Yankees. But it's funny, though. It's funny how, I can't remember or go back to a stretch of time where we've looked forward to the football season this much. You always look forward for football, whether your team's going to stink or whether your team's going to be good. Because if your team's not good, too, you always just look forward to watching football. Fall, Sunday mornings, cool air. It's an awesome time of year. October, 1 o'clock game, tailgating. Even if your team's not good, which is very frustrating. But it's always just a fun time of year. Love football. You get to sit down on a Sunday and watch football from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock. It's awesome. So that aspect is always exciting. But for many years now, we've always sat here and we've talked about how we don't want the baseball season to end. Or many years, at least for the Yankees' perspective. It's they're in the playoffs. Let's see what we can do. And last year, too, where the Mets and the Yankees were both in the postseason. It was short-lived. But it's crazy how irrelevant baseball is right now in New York. And at the beginning of the year, yet on the cover of magazines, the GQ magazine, the year baseball came back to New York, with both the Yankees and the Mets expected to do big-time damage. At least from a Yankee perspective, I didn't think they would win a World Series. I didn't think this roster was good enough. But I did believe that the Yankees would make the playoffs. I did. I didn't think they would be this bad. If you're a Yankee fan, unless if you have it on record, if you're a Yankee fan that you said going into this year, they're not going to be a playoff team, I don't believe that. Because I think we all agree that they were probably going to be a playoff team. But they weren't. I didn't have the Yankees winning the World Series. I didn't think they would do that. I was still going into the year, I was happy the season was beginning. I thought they'd be a playoff team, but I didn't love their offseason. I would have liked them to add more. But either way, that's besides the point. But it's crazy how irrelevant it's crazy how irrelevant it's come. Where the Mets are, nobody talked about the Mets. Yankees are still getting a lot of heat because you're wondering where they're going to go. Like, the Mets kind of already made their path set at the deadline. We're going to retool. Most likely, they're probably going to retool next year. There's not a whole lot to talk about the Mets. But with the Yankees, it's still like, what the heck are they going to do? What? Like, even night by night. Like, we don't even... I put the game on, but the energy level, I'm just sitting back watching and seeing what the young guys can do. The results don't even matter at this point. I don't even really get mad if the Yankees lose anymore. I don't. I was getting mad earlier in the year. But you don't even get mad now because the season's over. It's tough to watch these games every night. It really is. It really is tough. And that's why baseball season or football season right around the corner helps. Because it's going to be a very good distraction. And then with neither team being in October baseball, all eyes are going to be on the Yankees or all eyes are going to be on the Jets and the Giants. Because the Yankees and the Mets aren't going to be in October baseball. So, anyway, that's my baseball rant for the... We've talked a whole lot of baseball on this show. It's been a whole lot of negative. I'm hoping this year talking football on this show, which will have a lot of football content on here. I'm hoping that we're talking more about a successful football season, but we'll see. Anyway, that'll do it for the podcast here today. We'll be back tomorrow with my AFC North standing predictions. Again, comment in the comments section down below either your NFC East standings projections or whether you like mine, disagree with mine, agree with mine, whatever you got. Any comments, drop them in the comments section down below. Always appreciate all the support. We'll see you all back here tomorrow. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.